Thank you guys for coming. Hopefully, you guys are excited to be here. We're going to talk about flipping your community and talking about the difference between community building and networking. I'm one of the co-founders of the Digilog, which is a music and tech community that is in 25 different regions across the globe. And I'm also a music program manager for Dolby. So if you guys have ever seen Dolby Atmos music on one of the enabled streaming platforms, I teach emerging content music creatives how to use the technology. And I'm here joined with a bunch of really cool people who work in the music industry. So I'll pass it off to Maria. For those who aren't familiar with you, just let them know who you are and your role in the music industry.
Absolutely. Oh, so either way. Hi, everyone. My name is Maria Hironas. My pronouns are they, them. What I do in the music industry, I have my own agency called Cool Shit, Cool People. It's pretty self-explanatory. I get to work with cool people every day doing very cool shit. And as far as what I do in the music industry, kind of in three different capacities. I'm an investor, so I work with a lot of music tech startups or tech companies to help advise them on creator economy development and their music industry relations. Second is I work with kind of management companies and labels to be able to consult them on freelance project management. And then lastly, I work a lot in the creator economy, so being outside of music, working with influencers, celebrities, and talent to advise them on different business monetization opportunities. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Hi, I'm Todd Goodwin. I am the Senior Vice President and Head of 1824 and founder, which is a central creative team at Universal Music Group. So we do everything from music videos, live streaming, influencer marketing campaigns. We also have a very built out career development platform where we put students into positions to start their career while they're in college. And so when we do music videos, for example, 75% of the crew often is students. So, more to come on that, but that's me.
Hi, I'm Leslie Rosales. I am a Filipino-American woman born and raised here in Los Angeles. I went to Washington Prep. If anyone knows of the Generals, that's where I'm from, or that's where I went. As far as the music industry, I've worked in music for 16 years. For the first 10 years, I worked in artist management. And for the last 6 years, I've worked as a marketing executive at Def Jam, 88 Rising, and High Standards, and I'm currently the head of marketing at Rostrum Records.
Hello, my name is Leia De Leo. I am an independent artist based here in Los Angeles, but I am originally from Brockton, Massachusetts. I make R&B music with folk and pop influence. I also perform around Los Angeles, New York, and Chicago, and I'm a songwriter as well.
Awesome. So like I said, today we're going to be talking about community building and how you can build genuine connections in the music industry. For the students in the audience, raise your hand if you're interested in a career in music industry or if you're an artist. All right, don't be shy. We have a couple hands. Perfect. So for the panelists, can we talk a little bit about how networking has evolved into community building and more specifically what that means to you in your role?
How networking contributes to new community building. Sorry, what's
how
that?
It's evolved into community building, or how it's evolving into community building. So as opposed to just transactional one-on-one connections, how you're using your community building skills to actually build these deep, genuine connections with other creators.
So we were talking about this a little bit before, but I am a child of immigrants and grew up with a lot of mental illness as far as anxiety, depression, and OCD. So I was super awkward when I was a child. And I still think I struggle with that quite a bit. But I think over the years of, maintaining my mental health and surrounding myself with healthy people that aren't toxic, that empower me to be the person I am, what a concept. But I think in the vein of when you're working in music and when you're doing business with other people, you're going to network a lot. You're going to meet a lot of people that, make you question things about yourself, whether it's good or bad. And then from there, you have to ask yourself the person you want to be. And I think what I've really nurtured over my career is surrounding myself with people that empower me to be the person I want to be. So the difference between network and community building is networking, you're having a lot of first dates and bad ones at that. And then over time, you start realizing, oh man, these people are, the people I really want to spend time with are really beautiful, and I want to spend more time with them and nurture a community. So I do a lot of group texts, which we can get into in a bit, but amongst other things, just basically that bridging that gap between the people I want to be reflections of myself and my community versus people that aren't reflections of me.
Yeah, I'd say like, our culture at 1824 is pretty unique. I mean, every year we fly our entire staff. That includes the 75 part-time student employees, our 16 full-time employees, to like one location where we spend like a week together, and we have like artist performances, and we do panels, and we put them in a position, to lead through their inherent connection to culture. What's really interesting about that is that, someone that's coming into the company that's starting their career at 20 years old, when you look at 75 people in a room, like some of those people are going to become managers, some of them are going to become agents, some of them are going to become artists, some of them are going to, work for the company and run labels someday. And the connections that they make when they're in that room together will last them throughout their career. And I started my career in a similar capacity. I started working part-time when I was in college for Columbia Records, and I still talk to the people that I met through that. And when I look at the people I came up with through my career, we would always like sit down and like vent and complain, because at the end of the day, your network, they become your friends. And, we kind of made like a vow to each other that like when we're in positions of power, when we're able to make decisions, and when we are able to treat people and define how like our culture and our company is going to be in the future, we're going to do it differently. And I'd say now that we, several of my friends that are running companies, that are starting companies, that are in senior executive positions, like, it's up to us to like own up to that. And so I feel like the network that you create now is really, really important. And you have to like, don't wait for like Universal or Sony or Warner or a big indie label to like come to you and offer you an opportunity. There's things you can be doing now with your community, building a community. If you're not an artist but you love music, look at that artist that needs help in your class, and look to the left and right, front and back of you, and say, how can I build a network and a community around music now that's going to give me experience, so when that opportunity, when that call does come, I'm ready. So I would say like that's not the most succinct answer, but I feel like community is an ever-evolving thing and kind of hard to explain, but it just kind of has to happen naturally.
I'm glad you mentioned this earlier, but networking isn't about building relationships that are just transactional. I loathe small talk and people who like to start conversations with, so what do you do for a living? Or what are you working on? I like to connect with people on a human level. I ask questions like, how are you feeling? How's your family? Are you happy? Are you good? So yeah, I'm very big on connecting with people on a human level. I live in New York, and 6 years ago when I moved there, I had no family there. So all of my close friends in New York now are people who I've worked with in the music business, who I connected with on a deeper level as far as building a friendship. So for me, networking, especially in New York, in the music business there, my networking has been more so building friendships, and those friendships in turn end up people being my family, my tribe, and my community away from home.
I'm 23, so I'm just starting 2 years in, and a lot of the people that I meet are at the same place as me, and I learn to look at people for how they interact with me, not just what they can do for me, and getting to know them and what their character is, because we're all kind of on the same playing field at this point, and it's bigger than just what you are as a stepping stone. So I was grateful enough to go to a music school where everyone was doing what I love to do, and those people are now who I consider my connections and my people, because we were able to grow together and learn together, which I think is really important.
Yeah. So basically, just thinking about when I was younger, honestly, I thought that I would go to New York City, I would sit on some, doorstep for a record label, and I would show somebody how amazing I am, and they would just give me a job. And it didn't work like that. And so essentially what we ended up doing when I was younger is, shout out to the Digilog and Drew and Paulina, Medvis, and everyone that's a part of this team. We built a community that started in New York City. And what we did is we offered a free, safe space where people can come and just connect. And through that, it's grown into over 40,000 people across the globe, right? And because we've done that, we've been able to help people find jobs in the music industry. We've been able to help artists find opportunities in the music industry. And because it's grown to different locations, now me being from New Jersey, I can come to Los Angeles and have a community where I can connect with people who work in the industry. So it's super important to build those opportunities and offer people who are like-minded and maybe in the same, age range as you or in the same class as you, because you guys can kind of network laterally and elevate from there. So Maria, for you, what are some ways that students now can take kind of that idea of building a community and just apply it in a more practical sense today?
Yeah, totally. I'm a big fan of group text, like I mentioned. So something I started doing like 8 years ago when I was attending my first, I think my actually second South by Southwest. I came into it and I was really overwhelmed, mostly because I felt really weird about being alone at an event as a young woman, let alone just like being in a state that's oppressive, and not to mention just a conference that's very large and winding. I just started feeling unsafe, and I was like, okay, like I need to create my own safety. And I think sometimes the best community starts in that way, like thinking about like what is a community that makes me feel safe and how can I foster that. And for me, I like heard about this one person that's going, and I heard about this other person. I was like, yo, can I put you all in a group text and we just like tell each other when we're going to things or we plan something? And like 8 years of group texting, this is the 3 things I've learned the most. One, never try to plan a meetup in a group text. Do the thing you want to do and ask people if they want to come. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think the big thing at South by, the joke, and not to mention most conferences, is like, don't make plans. Like, you try to make meetings and things and it's just not going to happen. But what I love to do is be like, hey, I'm going to go check out, Baby Rose at this venue right now. Does anyone want to come? And then you see like this swarm of people like, yeah. And they're like, actually, I'm already there, or like stuff like that. And it's more of a surprise and delight rather than a stressor, because that's the whole point of it. The second thing I've learned about making group texts is having like the timing in which the mission is singular. So for example, for South by or like other conferences, I even have stuff for like, I have a friend of mine just recently added me to a estate sale group text, like making sure that there's a theme that's surrounding it. So like for the real estate group text, hey, we're going to this estate sale this day. This is the items we're looking for, and I'm like, yo, I need like these glassware cups. If you see them, like please let me know. And then you kind of have this exchange. And for the conferences and stuff, I really like doing things where like you kind of make the group text maybe like 2 or 3 weeks before, and then as you're going through the conference, it's obviously kind of crazy, and then after, you kind of give everyone an out. So like if you do not want to be here anymore, you can leave the chat. It's totally cool. There's no judgment. Or if you want to stay, we can keep it alive. And I feel like a lot of the times that's what's happened. The third thing I learned about making group text overall, pick your platform. I can't say I love WhatsApp because like I hate Facebook, but like I think with WhatsApp it makes it easy to like create sub communities. So what I do a lot of the times, I have a concept called Never Eat Alone. So I read this book a few years ago that basically was talking about trying to like use the time in which you're going to have to be able to like challenge your ability to meet people. So once again, I've always struggled with like kind of like having an assertiveness and being relational with humans, just mostly because I had my own, illnesses that just prevented me from feeling like I could be worthy enough to like make a connection with another person. And so what I started doing, and this was like a pastor of mine recommended when I was a kid, he like, start praying for chairs, and basically instead of praying for people, pray that anyone that sits in this chair is gonna have a good day and is gonna their kid's gonna smile today, like stuff like that. And then that slowly has grown into other habits. So with Never Eat Alone, it's simple. It's anytime you're gonna have a meal, just invite someone and have a nice conversation, community. And I think as a Latino, like food is very communal experience. It's very like odd to have a solo meal. But yeah, I think overall bridging the gap between these ways to like practical make community. It starts as simple as a group text. I've seen Discord, I've seen other things, but I'm a big fan of the group text.
Discord is a big one. How many of you actually use Discord? I think it's really cool. I started seeing people use it for, gaming, and then I started seeing musicians use it for like new releases, even things that they like outside of music, like recipes that they like, content that they really like. What are some other virtual communities or even in-person communities that you guys have seen that have popped up specifically during the pandemic even, that you really like?
I mean, obviously, Twitch is a big one, because like it's expanding beyond gaming and into lifestyle. Discord's obviously kind of connected to that, and I feel like, when you look at like an artist like Keshi and, you look at his Discord and the amount of conversations, it's a very authentic conversation. These are people that are bonded by their love of this artist, but then you start to see like all these real relationships develop, and that you'll at some point, you would hope, become IRL relationships. I mean, I think like that's the thing about like digital media. Like there's always something new, and I feel like you should try out everything, even if you don't love the platform. You should at least like download it, mess around with it, build a small community. If it dies, it dies, but you'll know what sticks. You know what I mean? So I think like look, I mean Twitch, Discord, and then like don't forget, I mean Instagram still is a great way to communicate with your people. TikTok is a great way to like, build community. And I feel like the one thing that I'm seeing that I love about TikTok now is like, what started out as like everybody trying to be perfect for a camera on Instagram has now developed into people like having real authentic conversations about things they're struggling with, like, mental illness and issues. And it feels like, Gen Z is taking something that was like headed one path and really made it more inclusive because they've taken ownership of the platform, which I think is really important. So I hope that answers your question.
Of course, yeah. Anyone else?
Just to add to that, I mean, I'm not the best at being involved in those things, and I'm learning to get involved in these things. Like even TikTok, it took me a while to actually want to be a presence on TikTok because I was like, well, I have to set up a camera and I have to look perfect and all this stuff. But the stuff that gets the most attention is the stuff that's real and like people can relate to and like the goofy stuff. So being able to give personality on these platforms is important as well.
Yeah. And then I think, just, talking a little bit more about just using these tools, it gives you an opportunity to really be authentic, be unique, and create whatever content you really want to create. And so when I think about where the music industry is going, I think about all of the different unique and diverse voices that are popping up and communities that are also helping and supporting these voices as well. So I think of, women in music. I think of industry in Spanglish. I think of Asian American Collective, Queer Capita. So Leslie, I know that you mentored for Asian American Collective. What was that experience like, and what are some qualities that students can look for when they're looking for a mentor for themselves when they're trying to get into the industry?
Yeah, so this is my third season mentoring for the Asian American Collective. I've had a lot of great mentors coming up starting in high school, like amazing mentors, but none of them were Asian. None of them looked like me. So when an opportunity came for me to be able to mentor with the Asian American Collective, to mentor the next up-and-coming set of young Asian executives, I went for it because I wanted to be someone for them who I didn't have. However, I love my mentors, don't get me wrong, but I wanted to provide mentorship for a young Asian American executive coming up in music. As far as what to look for in mentors, definitely look for someone who works in the field or in a genre that you want to work in. And it helps to look for someone that comes from the same background as you because you may get a sense of feeling understood by that person, especially if you guys share some of the same experiences in the past.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool just because you're able to. For me, when I started with the Digilog, I felt like even though there may not be too many people who look like me or may think like me, I can come into the industry with these people and start this revolutionary kind of movement around just like different unique voices. So Maria, you're part of Women in Music and you've started your own agency. How can students participate in groups like this? Find these groups, first of all, participate and get the most out of building genuine connections with these people.
Yeah, I think so I'm part of Queer Capita, Women in Music, and Industry in Spanglish, which shout out to Erica Montez back there. But as far as getting involved, like I think with young people, like reach out. Like if you are passionate about the subject matter and I've done a little research as to what the kind of work these organizations do, like try to offer value. I think that's the simple thing. I do want to acknowledge though, it is such a dance to like figure out what you can contribute at this age, like, and not to say like you don't. It's more like I mean I remember in college I'd just be like, I want to help, but I don't know how, I don't know what to do, and I don't have any experience. So like use me as your vessel. I think we're kind of at a different age in like the music business where we can have a little more sense of what we're coming into. But as far as getting involved in these organizations, reach out. Everyone's very kind and very gentle that does this kind of work. Second, if you have a story, share it. I think that's a big thing. I'm Bolivian, so I don't meet too many Bolivians, and when I meet another Bolivian, we like latch on to each other, and I think that's a very special thing. And then lastly, I think with Women in Music, one of the big things to get involved in is we have an executive internship program. So the internship program is for people that have no experience in music, not even college at that. And the whole point of it is to nurture the next generation of professionals in music that, are often, displaced because they don't have experience to get the internship that they need experience in. So we offer paid internships. It's a really great program. So highly recommend looking into that.
Cool. That's going to be something that you're probably going to see at one point or another, or feel that you have to have the work experience in order to get into a job or a career that you really like, right? So Todd, we had a great conversation about this last time. So as the students start to go looking for their first career opportunity, we talked about a portfolio versus a resume and how they can actually prove the value proposition and what they can bring to an organization. What are some things that they can consider as they start to look for their first internship or job?
Yeah, I mean, I think like what's really important, and you kind of hit the nail on the head, where like things have changed a lot. Where like when I was coming into the music industry, I was worried about experience. Now as an executive, I look at where the skill set gaps are in the company, and I look at who's most uniquely, prepared to fill those skill set gaps. And it's people that are coming out of high school and college. Content creators, people that understand, how to give voice to our artists when it comes to interacting with Gen Z. Therefore, if you're 18, 19, 20 years old, you actually are having this inherent ability to lead. And in an industry that is obsessed with, and completely not just obsessed, but depends on being successful in interacting with Gen Z culture, or at least, whatever generation it is, definitely that 18 to 24, demographic, you need to understand where your power is in that. And I feel like a lot of people don't, and they worry about the experience. Man, if you know how to use TikTok, if you know how to use CapCut, you have a hard skill that people want, right? And how you tell that story and how you put that on a resume is really, really important. So I think one thing that I always tell people is don't worry about the experience part. Look at what you have, write that down, and see how that is applicable. Go to like universalmusic.com, look into careers. Go to warnermusic.com. Go to sonymusic.com. Start looking at job descriptions. You would be pleasantly surprised to find that you know how to do some of those bullet points that are on there, and then start focusing on the ones that you don't. I think the reason that 1824, like in the last 6 years or whatever, we've placed 175 of our part-time employees into full-time jobs in the music industry. 100 of those have been retained at UMG or our partner labels. And the reason we've had that success is because we haven't focused on career development per se. We focused on artist services that are reliant on bringing in skill sets that Gen Z naturally, possess. And we've put a skill set first mentality, brought in people that are content creators, that understand, not just like how to post on social, but understand the algorithms, have done the research, and they're 19, 20 years old. And like, so that's like, don't worry about experience. Focus on what you know. Look at, do a self-assessment, understand where your gaps are and work on those. Like, learn how to use the Adobe suite. Literally, if you, there's student plans, you can learn basically the basics of Premiere in 20 minutes. You know what I mean? You're not going to be great at it, but you understand the basics and you speak the language. Same thing with CapCut, et cetera. Like, we had a student on our team that basically created a tutorial on editing with CapCut, handed it to one of our labels, and now they're using it as their educational document. That person's 20 years old that wrote it. So that's one thing I would say: understand your power, and know like how to put it and how to lead when it comes to that. Anybody else?
I will say that I'm 30. I did not understand TikTok. I did not understand Twitch. I didn't understand Discord. So having someone who understands what your age range is looking for and how to create content that is interesting to you guys is really cool. I used to work in the Digilog with a guy, shout out to Brandon Bailey, who we used to sit and figure out. He taught me everything about Twitch during the pandemic and how to figure out how to create live streams and performances. And he ended up going on to work for Todd.
Yeah.
Taylor is somewhere around here, and she's been helping the Digilog. Now she works with Music Forward as well, but she's been helping us with our TikTok strategy, which is something that we never really could figure out as well. And Leia, I met you through the Digilog as well, right? And we had a listening session here in Los Angeles. How has it been being part of a music community? How has that specifically helped your career growth?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things I've been doing has been through the Digilog community, meeting other artists and other people who have platforms for me to be able to be on as such a small artist has been so beneficial. Being able to do performances, I just recently performed at South by Southwest for the first time ever with the Digilog. They had their on deck, and I was part of the Dolby Accelerator, which I got through that listening session. It was one listening session. I didn't know what I was doing when I came. I was like, okay, we're just going to play my music, and then it just trickled into so much more. So you never know what opportunities you're going to get from even just going to a listening session or just meeting somebody, but go into it with your full self and your full, show your music and be confident in yourself.
Yeah. And that's helpful for artists here because we met in that listening session. I heard your music, right? That was through the Digilog. And then you came to South by Southwest and you performed and you were actually invited to take part in a music camp that lasted for an entire week. And through that, you met members of my team at Dolby, who then in turn allowed you to plan a listening session for your upcoming EP, which is coming out when?
May 17th.
All right, mark your calendars. And that's a great example of building that authentic, connection between a company, between an organization, between us. And so what are some other ways that artists can kind of take that approach so that it's not saying, hey, I want to be in a music camp with Dolby, or hey, I want to have a listening session in Hollywood. How do you work your way up to that as an artist?
Yeah, something my team and I talk about is building out versus just building up, and taking opportunities regardless of what it may look like to you. So performing at that open mic or collaborating with another artist, and you don't know where that's going to take you. But if you go into it being like, well, I just want to work with Dolby, but I don't know anybody at Dolby, and so I'm just going to go and like put my face there. Okay, maybe that works, but if you reach out, you can move up, building the platform to be able to build the walls up higher.
Yeah, if you aren't specifically looking for something, things will pop up. That's career advice, relationship advice, everything that you guys can use. If you are not looking for it, it can pop up for sure. Leslie, once someone's connected with you, how can they stay in touch with you and start to build a genuine connection?
So I have a life outside of music. I'm big on philanthropy. So I work with a nonprofit called #Lunchbag, where every month volunteers come together to make lunches for the homeless, and then we assemble lunches and then we pass them out at homeless shelters. I'm also a painter. I create art, and I've had art shows in LA, New York, and Miami. And then I just love hosting barbecues at my place, or having like NBA final playoff viewings at my place. So when I connect with someone, I invite them into my personal life to do a good deed and do something for charity, or enjoy some art, or just to vibe with me with good people and good energy.
Maria, how can people stay in contact with you once they've connected initially?
Once they've connected initially, I think I want to give like one answer, but I think it depends. Like I think one thing took me a long time, unfortunately, was to like kind of read the room. Because I think I don't know, at your age, like I remember being like, I wasn't very confident. I think I was just struggling with like understanding when someone was allowing me time or just like being kind about their time, and I think there's a very strong distinction of like someone just being like, what, I'll give you like 10 minutes, and it wasn't fruitful for them. So, or in some moments. So I think for me, like, it's really about like, some people I'm like, let's do like a quarterly meetup and like hang out every, just like check in and be conscious of that. I also have like office hours. So I've segmented time within my calendar every week. If people wanted to like, just chat about, everything from developing themselves as professionals and such. I think it depends. I wish I had a hard answer, but I think mostly I'm in the business of making friends. Euthanize me when I want to stop doing that. So I always I'm looking for relationships that are more than just you and me asking for, advice,
Does anyone have advice for someone who might be a little bit more introverted that is looking for ways to connect with people? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm pretty introverted, which kind of sucks as an artist because, like, you got to talk to everybody. But my team is not. So my manager, she talks to everybody, and she'll bring me into spaces where I'm able to talk to people. So it's really beneficial to have other people around you who are able to, you have your faults, they have their faults, but you can kind of counter each other out. So, like, if I'm not the most talkative, if you have a friend, somebody around you who is talkative, that can be helpful. But also, I know part of the reason why I'm introverted is because I don't like to filter myself, and I don't like to be in spaces where I feel uncomfortable or like feel like I have to be somebody who I'm not. And something that's helped me is actively being myself in every space that I'm in, 100%, regardless of what the other person's reaction is going to be to that. And that's kind of hard to do, but the older you get, I'm still learning, the more you stop caring about other people's opinions of you when it comes to your identity. Obviously, you want to think about how you're interacting with people and read the room, but my identity is going to be mine no matter what. So,
Anyone else?
I would just say, like I've got a pretty large team, right? And not all of them are super, extroverted people. I've got, in my mind, one of the best motion graphics people in the business that works for me, and he does not talk. But the reality is he speaks through his work, and it's totally fine, and he comes from a culture where, and he's mentioned this, where it's not cool to be boisterous. It's not cool to be like, and you got to respect that. You got to give people their space and respect them for who they authentically are. I could be a spokesperson. And what you said about surrounding yourself with people that are extroverted, we've got enough people around him to support him that, we can set up the conversation, we can have the hard conversations, he can go do his art and blow people away with it. And that makes a stronger statement than anything he's ever said. And so I think like just focusing on the work itself and being great about that, if you do great work, people will find you. It may be a different path, it may be harder, it may take longer, but it ultimately will happen at the pace it's supposed to. So, and we were talking about too, like as far as getting in touch with people and this and that, the interview process for getting your first job in the music industry can be pretty daunting. Like the preparation, how do I follow up? When do I send the follow-up email, all that kind of stuff. And when it comes to being extroverted versus introverted, you have to prepare for that conversation in different ways based on your personality. And the one thing that you also need to realize is that you cannot control what their thoughts are. All you can do is control what you control, the preparation, the skill set you have, and how you communicate your willingness and enthusiasm to do that job. It doesn't mean you have to be super bubbly. When you look at people that are executives in the music industry, you would not be shocked to find that there are an equal amount of people that, hide behind doors, like doing the real work, and then there's people that are out there very public facing. So I think there's a space for everybody, whether you're an extrovert or introvert or an introvert.
We touched on it a little bit. Basically, all of the skills that we've talked about just now, I want to kind of put it to use and make it applicable for the audience. But Leia, as an artist, and you three as executives in the music industry, how do you guys and your organizations benefit from people who are community builders and have that community building skill set? And what are you looking for specifically even?
Sure. So I used to work at Google for the YouTube music team and such like that. One of the things in the interview process I thought was really interesting. So it was like my process was like 9 months, like 8 interviews, and like several rounds within those. One of the things the recruiter that I've carried to this day always said to me was, don't think about how you can assimilate to the culture of Google. Think about how you can add to it. And I think in life and when you're making relationships and you're thinking about how you're creating these communities, like don't just think about how you can all be the same person and do the same things and be the same street team for the same subject. Think about what do you contribute and how can you feel most empowered to enable more culture. And I think when you do these interviews and you go to these companies that are like, we're a family, it's a lie. And but what you can be is a group of people that work together very well because you respect each other and you admire each other for the things you aren't. And those are the kind of companies you should consider working for, let alone communities and friendships that you should have.
Yeah, I mean, I think like, look, I think like your job is like you meet people and you bond over the fact that you work in the same industry, but you got to be be sure it doesn't define you. And I think one thing you've been hearing from a lot of, the team here is, whether it be various things outside of work, philanthropy, whatever, once you kind of get to know each other on a human level, those tend to move to the forefront. And long term, those tend to be the things that keep you connected with people, not just the job itself. Because people will change a job. People will move to different parts of the industry. People might get out of the industry altogether. But at the end of the day, you're meeting lifelong friends through this community that you've built. And from a very human standpoint, my best friend who lives in New York, I met through work, but we don't talk about work. Like we talk about our kids. We talk about like all this other kind of stuff. But I do think like your job can be a way to like do great work. At Universal, we have like these employee resource groups. We have PRISM, which is the LGBTQ plus ERG. We've got Utopia for Asian American Pacific Islanders. We've got all these different organizations that are doing incredible work in their communities. And the good thing about 1824 is we get to support all these groups and we get to work with them to throw events. Like we're going to be producing like a Pride Month showcase in June where we're going to have like 4 artists and Q&A. We're going to live stream it on Twitch. So we're taking the platform that we've built to give voice to these communities in an industry where people need to connect. And I think like when you're looking at a company that you want to work for, it is right. Like they say, oh, it's a family. It's like, no, you're the culture, not the company. The company's defined by the people that work for it, not the company itself. And so what you bring to the table, building relationships, treating people respectfully, if there's a culture you don't understand, taking the time to ask a question and learn about it. Imagine that. A lot of people don't even ask. They just make assumptions and they move on and the conversation's kind of dead. You'd be amazed what happens when you said, like, I want to learn more about Ramadan, and you have a conversation about Ramadan, like, oh, that's really interesting. I had no idea. And then you're having educated conversations about that. And then like, me and my assistant, we're talking about like various culture, right? And so now I understand that I'm more educated. And so I think like getting to know your employees, building community through that, it's going to be also extremely important for all of you, because the things that you see that are wrong in the music industry today are the things that you're going to be tasked with fixing. Just like everything in the world, it's always up to young people to fix problems that the generation before them left behind. Not the funnest thing, but it is a responsibility. So, and I am confident that, as we give more power and more voice to young people, and there's platforms that allow them to have a broader voice, that we are going to see some of the gaps in equity and et cetera, continue to shrink. But it's going to take work. It's not easy, and it's going to take strong community building and following through.
I co-sign everything Todd said. But what I'll add to, I think the importance, organizations should put importance on building community for their employees or for their workers, because like if an employee is unhappy, they can't perform at their highest level. So I've been lucky enough to work with companies that would have happy hour after 4 or off-site retreats where we all can get together outside of work, get to know each other, and just have fun, let our hair down, and have a good time and get to know each other. Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that?
I can add a little bit. I mean, from the artist perspective, it's like I'm in a lot of communities with other artists. So it's kind of a creative space. You're not always going to like the other person's music, but maybe you like them, or maybe you don't like them, but you like their music. It's trying to balance out if you want to work with them or not. I think character, taking in consideration what their character is and how you can collaborate with them. And yeah.
Even just to touch a little bit deeper, like working with your manager, Sandra, working with your producer, Obi, how is it working with someone who is helping to build your community as well? And what skill sets are you looking in these people?
Yeah, I mean, I'm blessed that my team, they're some of my best friends, so I can trust them. I know that I can confide in them, whether it's in music or outside of music. When I'm working with somebody, I'm very big on how we interact with each other in a normal space, rather just the business transaction. So obviously I want you to be, knowledgeable, but I'm in a space where I'm building, so I can expect you to be exactly on point. We're all gonna build together, and I think that's beautiful when you're working with people, to be able to build with them and learn from each other and piggyback off of each other. But to be able to rely on your team and to know them as people, I think is very beneficial.
I think I'll leave you guys with just understanding that you're in the future as you start to have an internship or your first job or your second job, your role doesn't define you, but the skill sets that you bring to that job will always define who you are. How you interact with people, the skills, the hard skills, the soft skills that you guys bring. And so those are things to really focus on and let that kind of guide your career in the future. That being said, does anyone in the audience have any questions for us? Want to come up here? I'll just put you right forefront of everybody. Tell us your name also before you can use the microphone.
Oh, hi, I'm Quarks. Guess my question was what would be your advice to an artist who has been posting on social media for a little while and just feels like they have zero aptitude and can't get more than a few hundred views on anything?
Yeah, it sucks. Consistency is very important, though, and also knowing the audience that you do have and kind of finding your niche or who is interacting with your stuff and getting to more of those type of people. So if people like nature and you're posting about nature, you want to find more people who post about nature, consistently post about that, but make it unique to you and your music. But don't give up, because social media, I hate social media, but it's necessary, obviously. And there's the algorithm, but if you're consistent with it, you'll see more traction picking up.
I think as an artist too, it's kind of unfair to artists, the expectations that we place on them, especially when they're unsigned. You have to be your own social media manager. Before you have a real team behind you, your own manager. You have to design all your own artwork. You're expected to do so many things. What you really need to be focused on is the art itself. And the more you put into the art and making that great, it's hard, because even if you build a following and you have one song that pops off, if you don't have 3 more to follow it, that following starts to erode. What you want to do is focus on the music and the art itself, making sure that's great. So when that moment happens, when the music does the talking for you and people start to pay attention, it then becomes this thing where it's sustainable. So don't get down about the likes, the follows, this and that. Just feel good about what, I'm a creator, I'm making art. At some point my time will come, and I'm going to focus on that and making that the best I possibly can. If you do that, somehow everything else will work out, but you got to focus on the art first.
And just to add to what he said also, my first job was a sales job. And so what they told me was, if you focus on really building that connection with the customer and not trying to sell the product, they'll tell 3 other friends who will tell them about what you're selling or what you're doing. So as an artist, if you build that connection with that one person that really supports you, hopefully they'll tell 3 other people, and then they'll tell 3 other people. And we use that kind of concept with the Digilog when we built it. It was, we had events and we make sure that we made people feel really good when they came there, and they went and told friends, and then they went and told friends, so that when I go in Los Angeles, 3,000 miles away from home, and someone's like, oh yeah, I love that community, and I heard about it from so-and-so. And that's really a validation of how you build a community and how you slowly go about it. But don't make it a numbers game at first. Focus on the craft.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You want to come up?
Hi everyone, I'm Shireen. I have this burning question. I get to meet people like you and people of, good thing there's no feedback. I get to meet people like you and even of high caliber, and I'm just curious, what's an organic way of just continuing to follow up? I love how you have kind of office hours and things like that are opportunities that maybe we can reach out. But what about others we have I like how they think, and how can I just not sound so weird and keep almost becoming like a stalker? I don't know what's the right way of saying that.
I know what you're saying. It's a problem that everybody, even no matter what level you're at, you'll continue to encounter this. I'll start and then pass the mic around. I think one thing that people say, it's about who you know, and when we had that conversation, the full truth is it's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. And putting yourself in a position to be recommended, and that recommendation takes work and it takes authenticity. So when a job comes open or something, that person might get 1,000 resumes. You want to be one of those people where they say, I want to talk to 5 people and I want you to be one of them, right? LinkedIn's a great tool for me. Sometimes I get overwhelmed with it because, when you work for a major company and you have a certain title, people just reach out randomly every day. But there's people that their messages are so authentic and they're so pure, and they're following up with like, hey, with very specific pointed questions that you just see in them, like this person is someone worth like connecting with, right? I think it does take a little bit of tenacity, right? Try the DM. If it doesn't work, try the LinkedIn. Stalking, I think we view that in a different way, right? I mean, there's stalking, and then there's somebody that is aggressively trying to push their career forward. That is a respectable trait. It might feel like stalking to you because you're a well-adjusted human being, but at the end of the day, it's not like we look at it as like, wow, I'm never going to I'm never going to look down on somebody for trying to push their career forward. And, to your point about building a portfolio versus a resume, everyone has a resume. A portfolio is things you've actually done. So no matter how big or how small it is, if you've done something that you think has value, you should feel comfortable sharing that thing. And if you want to start a conversation like, hey, here's something I did. I just wanted you to I think it's really, really interesting. For what I learned for it, here's a few things that, I would tweak, but what kind of advice do you have maybe to help? Those are things that really open conversations. But, it takes thought, takes time. Don't worry about stalking people. They'll let you know.
I'll say when it comes to connecting with me, I'm not going to say it can be hard to get to me. It really isn't. I'm very accessible, especially on social media. But then I do look at, I'm asked often by people I don't know, like, hey, can you get me tickets to this concert, or can you get me into this event? And I ignore those requests. However, I do promote my philanthropic efforts and these charity events that I do. When someone actually comes to one of these events and actually cares about making a lunch for someone homeless and know that they're not going to get anything back, they're just giving, I do look at that person like, okay, you're a giver, you're genuinely here to give. I pay attention to that. Yeah. I'm just not trying to get people to come to my charity event.
I don't know if I'm the best person to answer this question. I am doing better at responding to things. It is important to interact with people who are, asking you questions. I do enjoy, if you want to DM me and ask me questions, I will answer them. But yeah.
I would say I would just end it with support people with what they're doing, even if it's philanthropic. She mentioned that she throws art showcases. If you show up to that, if you show that you're genuinely interested in the work that they're doing as well. If I tell Todd, hey, I love what you're doing, with 3.5 and 1824. If I tell, Leia, I really love the single that you released, and I can't wait to listen to the album that's coming out. Those things go a long way. Even just providing value. I put out on social media that I cannot find cream of coconut anywhere, and her friend sent me all the places that I could actually go buy that. That was helpful to me. That sticks in my mind, and it's really helpful. So it's not just about what can you do for me, it's how can I be of help when needed. How can I be there to support what you're doing? I love sports. We want to talk about sports, we can talk about sports. I can talk about the Eagles losing the Super Bowl, that sort of stuff. It's not a problem. So that's what I would say. All right. Unfortunately, we don't have any more time for questions, but I'll be floating around, and I'm sure these folks will be floating around as well if you want to stop us on the way out. But I do want to thank you guys for coming, and wish you the best of luck as you continue with high school, college, your careers, and be sure to reach out if you have questions, and definitely look forward to seeing you guys in the industry at one point or another in the future. And thank you to the panelists as well for being part. A round of applause for the panelists.